On this episode of Urban U, Bitter Crop, The Heartache and Triumph of Billie Holiday, a revealing biography by Hunter College professor Paul Alexander, a unique course at John Jay equipping students to navigate sexual violence in various contexts, and in honor of October baseball, we uncover how Brooklyn College alum and Major League pitcher Sam Nahum helped advance baseball's racial integration. All that and more, welcome to Urban U.
Eleanor Fagan was a young woman who grew up in, I would say, impoverished conditions. Around age 12, she got interested in going to the local bordellos in her neighborhood. And that was the first time she was introduced to the world of music and the world of, let's say, the nightlife. And she was captivated by both. She did do a little work in one of the bordellos. And at some point along the way, it became clear that she was getting a little out of control. So her mother sent for her, and then she moved to New York, where she gave up that life and really focused on becoming a singer. And that's when Eleanor Fagan became Billie Holiday.
In his new book, Bitter Crop, Hunter professor Paul Alexander tells a behind-the-scenes story of both Holiday's personal and professional life. Early in her career, Holiday toured with Count Basie and later with Artie Shaw. With Shaw, she became the first African-American singer to tour with an all-white orchestra, encountering prejudice at almost every turn. Because of this, Holiday stopped touring and in 1938 moved on to become the opening act at Cafe Society, the first integrated nightclub in the United States.
She was there for 2 years. And it made her famous because there was so much attention, first of all, so much attention paid to the fact that it was an integrated nightclub. Got a huge amount of press, and also attention from like the local police department and the FBI and, different government agencies to keep an eye out on what was happening.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root.
In the spring of '39, she got this song called Strange Fruit from Abel Maripol. She immediately latched onto it because she knew that this was a song that really spoke to her heart. It's an anti-lynching anthem. Strange Fruit really took her into a different level of fame. Ahmet Ertegun, the founder of Atlantic Records, called it the first shot in the civil rights movement. She didn't march, she didn't make speeches, but she was making her statement about civil rights.
Strange Fruit ended up being the biggest selling record of her career, but with that success came a very bright spotlight.
The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was a sister organization to the FBI, and it was run by a guy named Harry Anslinger, who was an open racist. He allowed his racial prejudice to influence, the targets that they would choose, and many of them ended up being jazz musicians, in part because they were prominent, mostly black figures, popular in culture. And so he went after Sonny Rollins, Charlie Parker, the list goes on. But of all of them, Billie was the biggest target because she was the most famous. And she was also a woman. And so, she was too big, and they had to knock her down a notch.
Holiday, feeling the pressure, was drinking heavily and eventually turned to drugs. Soon, she found herself in trouble with the law.
She began to dabble with heroin, and then she eventually became addicted while she was with a guy named Joe Guy. She was finally busted in 47.
Billie turned herself in, believing that she'd be sent to rehab. But in the case of the United States versus Billie Holiday, she was sentenced to a year and a day in prison. By the time she got out, she had kicked the habit, but life still wasn't easy. Because of the conviction, she lost her cabaret card, which meant she could no longer work in the New York City clubs, and her personal life, with one or two exceptions, was a mess.
She had known Tallulah Bankhead for years, but they became involved after 48, after she got out of prison, and that went on until the early 50s. The affairs with men couldn't be worse. I mean, they're just the flip side of the affairs with women. John Simmons was extremely abusive to her, physically abusive in shocking ways. Then she went on to John Levy, who was extremely abusive, became her manager, stole all of her money.
During her time with Levy, he, working with the feds, set her up for another drug bust. Then, in 1956, Louis McKay did the same thing.
Basically, what happened as a result of that one is that Louis McKay sort of forced her to marry him because a husband can't testify against a wife. And that's how he became the owner of the Billie Holiday estate when she died 3 years later. And that's why he wanted to marry her in the first place.
But through it all, Lady Day kept on singing.
Billie was totally independent in her artistic life. She did not take direction literally from anyone. She chose the material she wanted to sing and she sang it. You know, Billie didn't read or write music, but she knew music, you know, so she would work with composers and musicians who would, you know, translate it for her. She wrote at least 15 songs. 5 of them are classics. She wrote Don't Explain.
Hush now, don't explain.
Lady Sings the Blues.
Lady sings the blues. She's got them bad. She feels so sad.
And her most famous song of all is God Bless the Child.
Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own.
Which is one of the most recorded songs of the 20th century. She used her music to express her feelings and emotions. And you know, I mean, that's how the audience connected with her. They connected with her on an emotional level. So even at the end, when her voice was shot, her voice, you know, the audience never left her. Edith Piaf had the same kind of fan base. Judy Garland had the same kind of fan base, because that's not what they were there for. They were there for the emotion.
On May 31st, 1959, Billie Holiday was rushed to the hospital. At the age of 44, she was losing her battle with cirrhosis of the liver. But even then, the harassment didn't stop. While on her deathbed, she was arrested for heroin possession once again. The police took her mugshot and fingerprints in her hospital room and posted a guard at her door.
And I think it was this harassment that really contributed to her decline, because she, until all this happening, she had gradually started improving. But starting with the arrest and then the harassment, which was nonstop, that's when the decline began. And it was not long after that until she, you know, she died of basically a cardiac arrest. She had just a profound effect on American music. And then because of who she was and what she stood for, she's become, you know, a political symbol now as well. And so I would say here's this young black girl growing up in Baltimore, and she's ended up being an American icon. I mean, what a great American story that is. She should be celebrated today, and that's what I hope my book does.
I'm Scott Kirby for Urban U.
I've had so many students from John Jay come up to me and say, you know, you're the reason, or Olivia Benson, or Captain Olivia Benson, is the reason that they got into, you know, wanting to be part of the justice system.
That's Mariska Hargitay, known for playing Captain Olivia Benson on Law & Order Special Victims Unit for the past 25 years. This year, she spoke at John Jay College's theatrical production called Seeing Rape.
The stories of survivors pave the way for healing, for solidarity, and for justice.
Seeing Rape is an interdisciplinary studies course that fuses anthropology and theater. Throughout the semester, students explore the subject of rape, culminating in their own plays, performed by professional actors.
How about that guy that was with you that grabbed you by your arm, huh?
What guy?
Well, it seemed like he knew you. He took you away.
Wait, what?
The innovative class is the product of collaboration. Anthropology professor Shauna Trinch and playwright Barbara Cassidy teamed up 11 years back to not just teach about justice, but to achieve it in real time through what they call radical witness.
We started out, so, we had this class, and then we had, at the end of the class, we said, okay, why don't we do like a public reading of these plays? They're good. So we had something in the Black Box here at John Jay, which is, a small theater in the basement. And there was a line outside to 11th Avenue almost, right, to get in. And we were like trying to fit people in the theater.
But it's a great experience for students to actually have professional actors bring their work to life in readings and these stylized readings that Barbara directs.
So then now, we've grown a bit. Now we get the bigger theater and we have more of an event, like we planned for it. It's a little bit more involved now.
Evidence of just how involved? When the professors heard Law & Order star Mariska Hargitay would be receiving an honorary degree at John Jay last year, they jumped to the opportunity to ask her to speak at Seeing Rape. This spoke to her because the actress is also an activist. Her tough detective role on Law & Order over the years had inspired her to founding the Joyful Heart Foundation, which fights on behalf of survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse.
When people come into our class and they say, Seeing Rape, oh, I don't know if I want to do a whole semester-long study of rape. And I say, well, do you watch Law & Order SVU? Because that's what you're watching every single night at 10 p.m. So can't you do an academic study of rape now? And they kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I was a big fan. I love Law & Order SVU.
Kendall Brutus and Simone Holium were amongst the latest set of students of the Seeing Rape course. Their plays shows how the students tackle a wide variety of stories.
I worked on Do You Hear Me?, which is about female abusers. I really wanted to express that, this also happens. Women also do this, and we can't just say that it's a male problem.
I've been having some issues with Amanda lately.
What kind of issues? You seem like such good friends. I'm sure it'll pass, whatever it is.
And the students' plays have evolved with the changing times.
I wrote Never Get Caught. Technology played a big role in what happened to the character.
He made me feel like I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. And then he asked for more, a video of me touching myself. I hesitated at first, but my urges were so strong. So I sent him a video of me playing with myself under my shorts. He couldn't really see anything, I made sure of that, but he screen recorded the whole thing. And I was so confused, why would he do that?
Kendall Brutus's play is so interesting in that it's new and it's not, right? The sexual awakening that she talks about in the play, that she writes about for her character, is so interesting and so real that a lot of students also really appreciate the discussion of sexuality that is normal.
Professor Trinch says that even with the success of Seeing Rape, the show still needs funding to keep going each year.
Our collective voices are what's going to make change.
For Urban U, this is Shannon Ayala.
Sky Andrews is the first in her family to go to college, and it wouldn't be possible without financial aid. The youngest of 4 raised by a single mom, Andrews is among the thousands of New York college students who apply for student aid annually, including TAP.
I'm very grateful that I don't have to take out any loans for school because of FAFSA, TAP, and then my school scholarships, which I know is a huge privilege my whole life going into school, being first gen and not really ever having like a college fund set aside because that just was not possible for my family.
There are multiple options to pay for college, and it all starts with FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. This application could provide scholarships, grants, and loans for students. But the application also unlocks the state aid in New York for things like TAP, the Tuition Assistance Program, as well as the Excelsior Scholarship and money for undocumented students from the DREAM Act.
When I was filling out my financial aid, and I didn't realize there was more financial aid services for low-income students. So I applied for TAP, didn't realize that I meet the requirements, and I got the maximum award for that. So I'm very grateful that financial aid, there's only so much there is available, and so much students may or may not know.
Brooklyn College student Damian Andrade, who works to help his parents financially, attends CUNY debt-free.
I also received the Pell Grant, the maximum award for the Pell Grant, because without Pell and TAP, I wouldn't be able to pay my full ride. I'm grateful to have my sister, Crystal, because she was the first one to go to college. She really helped me guide the way through filling out the FAFSA and TAP. Because when I first saw that application, I really did not know what I was supposed to do.
Over 300,000 applications are received by the New York State Higher Education Services Corp., and $800 million are awarded annually to students.
So our applications, whether it be the traditional TAP application via FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, we're looking to see do students meet the income criteria, which was just increased in New York State. We base it on what we call New York State net taxable income, which is an income figure that's on the New York State tax returns, not the federal tax returns. And typically students, if they're a dependent, can qualify up to $125,000 New York State net taxable income.
The U.S. Department of Education will make the 2025-2026 FAFSA form available to all students December 1st. And while filling out financial aid forms can be overwhelming, Turner recommends students and families to take advantage of several programs available to help them.
We recommend first that students sign up for our text message programs, which will alert them about our different opportunities. But we do drop-in clinic events. We do virtual filing assistance workshops where we pair families one-on-one with financial aid experts and other volunteers who can help them navigate the form.
According to Turner, TAP has what he calls a hidden benefit to it.
If you're a student who qualifies for a TAP award and you attend a SUNY or CUNY college, the promise has always been that TAP will provide a pathway to full tuition support. So if I'm going to a 4-year CUNY school and the tuition there is $7,000 a year, they'll qualify if the student meets the income requirements for the maximum TAP award of $5,665. But the state also provides what we call a tuition credit, which is a bonus award that the student will get that will cover the remainder of their tuition.
CUNY offers student assistance when it comes to filling out FAFSA.
Our office can definitely assist with connecting students with those resources. We are directly affiliated with the CUNY Office of Student Affairs, so that knowledge is readily available for us.
Services such as CUNY FAST offers students one-on-one help with questions around FAFSA, TAP, the New York Excelsior program, and more.
You're debt-free, you are starting over, you're not starting with burden from the past. You're able to be way more ambitious with your career. We understand that higher education is a choice, but it is a choice that benefits our entire nation, and we think that all the individuals who make that choice should be honored and should be helped as much as possible.
For CUNY TV, I'm Elena Romero.
It is counterintuitive to think that at this point in the evolution of devices to listen to music and to make music, we will go back to something that was invented in the 50s and 60s. These technologies, cassette, vinyl, etc., these formats, are adding something else to the listening experience. I feel like I've been involved with tapes for a long time, which is weird because I'm, younger than most people that have been involved with tapes for a long time. When I went to do college in Córdoba, in Argentina, I started being part of these indie music scenes. I started working in media, writing in blogs and magazines about this indie culture that I was very interested in and involved with. At least 2 of those labels started producing cassettes. And I'm talking 2013, 2014. We made an article about one of these labels, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I didn't know coming into my doctorate that I was going to focus on that, but then I was like, why not? I really love this. I've been a fan of and a collector of tapes for a decade now. I just kind of meshed those things together and eventually did my doctoral dissertation about that. I argue that these physical things that we once took for granted help us connect to music and through music different than the ways that today's streaming services allow. The main question that I had coming into this project was what is the role of the cassette now? We don't need it. So why are labels putting the work of materializing this music? It says this mattered to someone enough that they put effort into taking it out of the cloud and put it into something that someone may or may not buy. But it's now part of a catalog, it's part of a history that a label tells. All of these things add layers of meaning and value to music productions. So we can think of music as something that is not inherently valuable, but that is made valuable with all of these tiny practices. It's a very interesting kind of value production and circulation that is based on connecting with others and less so about making profits. Things in Argentina started to get a little rougher in terms of economy, and so a lot of labels that maybe weren't thinking about tapes at the beginning suddenly saw tapes as a viable option to materialize music. And so suddenly there was this spread or a flourishing of tapes across many different genres. A lot of them are taking the time to actually spend hours pushing buttons on tape recorders, designing the cover art, this kind of artisanal value that goes into this labor. It's a lot of what people are appreciating when they're buying tapes. And even though things are getting more expensive and more expensive, the tapes continue to be very affordable. As an ethnomusicologist, what I do is ethnography. And doing ethnography means I hang out with the labels and I talk to them and I see how they live and I see how expensive things are and how they're actually struggling. I stand by them in the merch table where 20 people come and only one of them buys something. That lets me appreciate and grasp how nuanced these kind of alternative economies are. My new dream is I want to write about the work of independent labels in South America, and how they're able to do all the wonderful things that they do with very limited resources and with just the care that they put into music and valuing the music. That's what labels do, they create value. And I think that is something that is worth celebrating.
Still up on Urban U, we step onto the baseball diamond to revisit a pivotal yet little-known moment in the sport's history.
In October 1945, Brooklyn Dodgers general manager Branch Rickey famously signed Negro Leagues All-Star Jackie Robinson to a contract with the Dodgers organization, heralding the end of racial segregation in Major League Baseball. But just a month earlier, there was already an integrated baseball team winning a world championship. And it wasn't the exalted Branch Rickey at the helm, but a less heralded Brooklyn boy breaking down barriers. Sam Nahem. The championship in question was the European Theater of Operations Championship, better known as the GI World Series. With the Allied presence in Europe at the end of World War II, the United States Armed Forces created official military baseball leagues across their European bases. And the organizer, manager, and player for this integrated team, the Overseas Invasion Service Expedition All-Stars, was Major League pitcher and Brooklyn College graduate Sam Nahem. Bucking not just baseball segregation, but also military segregation by insisting on placing black soldiers on his team, Willard Brown and Leon Day, who had played for the famed Negro Leagues teams, the Kansas City Monarchs and Newark Eagles, respectively, before their war service. Now, this GI World Series, in front of 50,000 fans, was no joke. Over 200,000 soldiers played in these leagues across Europe in 1945, and with so many professional ball players serving in the war, competition was high. In fact, the team opposing Nahem for the championship, the 71st Infantry Red Circlers, featured 8 Major League players. Nahem's team had only 2. But in the deciding game of the series, on September 8, 1945, in the same stadium Hitler once held Nazi rallies, Nahem's integrated team walked away with the championship and a small victory for civil rights. Indeed, Sam Nahem defied expectations most of his life. Born in 1915 to Syrian Jewish immigrants, Nahem grew up in Brooklyn speaking Arabic. Being involved in the Communist Party while at Brooklyn, he was undoubtedly one of only a handful of Jews, let alone Syrian Jews, in Major League Baseball at the time, and perhaps the only openly communist. Of course, it was a rarity to be pro-integration as a professional ballplayer in the 30s and 40s. But he was no stranger to being an anomaly, as his education and interest made him a colorful character in the newspapers. During baseball off-seasons, he earned his law degree from St. John's University, just as a fallback if this whole professional baseball thing didn't pan out. He enjoyed classical music and was known to bring Russian and French literature into the dugout. As the Associated Press wrote, "Bespectacled Sam Nahem is a scholarly gent." Playing only a few seasons in the majors, Nahem's major league career itself was rather unspectacular. But his contribution to integrating baseball in that groundbreaking 1945 campaign was anything but. After the war, though he would leave the Communist Party in the 1950s, Nahem would maintain his left-wing proclivities, attending civil rights and anti-war rallies, and ultimately becoming a union leader at Chevron. Nahem would die in 2004, and in the years since, certainly his name isn't as well known today to baseball fans as Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey. But for one war-torn season in 1945, it was Willard Brown, Leon Day, and Sam Nahem who led the charge in integrating our national pastime. For Urban U, I'm Ari Goldberg.
CUNY TV has an app. Download it and watch us anytime, anywhere on the go. That's all for our show. For more episode highlights and sneak peeks into our upcoming stories, meet us on our social media platforms. Thank you for watching these stories from the largest university in the nation, the City University of New York.